maka-Pilipinas, na maka-Pilipinas. Iboto ang maka-Pilipinas, na maka-Pilipinas. Taong may respeto sa buhay at pamilya, makabuluhan at matinoong pamumuhay. Siya yung makapagtataguyod ng kabutihang panlahat. Di mangiiwan, makakasama ang lahat. Makatotoo, hindi sinungaling, makalingat, maalalahanin, makatarungan, makakalikasan, iaalay ang buhay para sa bayan. Sa pagpili ng liderato, laging tatandaan, maganda sa kanya lahat ng katangian. Na maka-Pilipinas, na maka-Pilipinas, na maka-Pilipinas. Iboto ang maka-Pilipinas. Yeah. Makakalayan, ito'y ipanglalaban, makakapayapaan, ayaw ng karahasan, makabatas at makabayan, masigasig tumulong, makaahon ang bawat isa. Malinaw ang pananaw sa makabagong bukas, makatwiran at patas makisama, at higit sa lahat, maka-Diyos siya dapat. Sa pagpili ng liderato, laging tatandaan, napata sa kanya lahat ng katangian. Ang maka-Pilipinas, maka-Pilipinas, maka-Pilipinas. Iboto ang maka-Pilipinas, maka-Pilipinas.
Gabayan ng Pilipinong bumoto ng responsable. Yan naman ang aming panata sa PPCRV. Makikita sa panimula ng 1987 Constitution ang mga katangiang mahalaga sa bawat Pilipino, lalo na sa ating mga lider.
Panatang Maka-Pilipinas.
Panatang Maka-Pilipinas.
Panatang Maka-Pilipinas.
Iboboto ko Maka-Pilipinas.
Makabayan sa lupang sinilangan.
Makataot may respeto
sa buhay at pamilya.
Siya ay makatuwiran at patas makisama.
Masigasig tumulong, makaahon ang bawat isa.
Makatarungan,
Makalingat,
maalalahanin sa kapwa.
Makakasama ang lahat.
Siya ay di mangiiwan.
Makapagtataguyod ng kabutihang panlahat.
siya ay makabatas.
Siya ay makatotoo.
Siya ay may malinaw na pananaw
Para sa makabagong tuwas.
Higit sa lahat, siya ay makadiyos.
Kaya't ayaw niya ng karahasan.
Siya'y makakapayapaan.
Iboboto ko isang taong makakalayaan.
Isang leader na makakaligtasan.
Isang Pilipinong makabuluhan at magino ang pamumuhay.
Sa isip, sa salita, at sa gawa. Gabayan ang Pilipinong bumoto ng responsable. Yan naman ang aming panata sa PPCRV.
Pleasant afternoon to all. Welcome to Your Vote Matters, Make It Right, Make It Count. This event is presented by the Phoenix Good Governance Committee in partnership with the J. Phoenix Committee.
Prayer for Philippine election. Dear Heavenly Father, we praise you for the democratic freedom we enjoy in the Philippines. As Filipino citizens, help us to exercise our right to vote wisely. Give us wisdom in understanding each candidate, not based on rumors, but rather on our careful scrutiny of the candidates' backgrounds and potential ability to lead our nation. We have faith in your sovereignty. Guide our future leaders. Use the Philippines for your glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Bayang magiliw, perlas ng silanganan, alab ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisiil, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bughaw, may dilag ang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal, ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidilim, lupa ng araw ng luwalhatit pagsinta, buhay ay langit sa piling mo, aming ligaya na pag may mang-aapi, ang
Our host for today has over 20 years of leadership experience in the energy, natural resources, and development sectors. Educated and trained at leading institutions in the United Kingdom, United States, and Asia Pacific with an entrepreneurial focus on renewable energy, off-grid solutions, education, community empowerment, and sustainable development. He is also a host and anchor at ANC, Philippines' leading cable news channel. Let us all welcome Mr. Quintin Pastrana.
Good afternoon. My name is Quintin Pastrana, your host for today's forum. Now, this forum is offered free via Zoom, and we are simultaneously broadcasting live in Phoenix's official Facebook page and YouTube channel. Be sure to stay on until the end of the forum because we've got exciting surprises for you all. To formally open this event, may I call on Phoenix President Michael Arcatomi Guarin.
Thank you, Quintin. So hopefully everyone can hear me clearly enough. Good afternoon, everyone. All right, hold on. All right, so again, good afternoon to our dear speakers, Bill Luz, Atom Araulio, Gretchen Ho, Lynn Pinubu, and to our host, thank you, Quintin. Welcome to this Phoenix webinar, and thank you for your time. We truly appreciate it. Again, good afternoon again to all our Phoenix members in attendance today. Thank you for supporting this webinar. As you all know, voter education is one of the key priorities of Phoenix in 2022, given that it is an election year. And to all our participants, enjoy this webinar. This is for you, and please listen intently to all of our guests. Our event this afternoon is one of many ways that Phoenix is trying to encourage Filipinos, more so the youth, to exercise their right to vote. We believe that voting is important in ensuring that Philippine democracy is kept inclusive and fair. In effect, the act of voting is your personal way of shaping your own future, how you like resources to be used, and how you like your future society to be developed. So this year's vote is seen as a high-stakes election because we will choose public servants who will be tasked with leading the country's post-pandemic recovery and growth initiatives. I hope you're starting to realize how important this period is for all of us as Filipinos. There's also a higher level of interest, it seems. From what the COMELEC shared late last year, there are a total of 65.7 million registered domestic voters. Add to that around 1.8 million in overseas voters. And my understanding is that 1.8 could even increase to around 2 million. So with that, I'm always encouraged by this statement from a well-known personality. Let me see if you can guess who it is. And I quote, "It's not enough to just want change. You have to go and make change by voting." Some of you might be surprised, but that was from Taylor Swift, a singer-songwriter which I know everyone knows, especially this crowd this afternoon. And I hope that statement resonates with all of you. I encourage you to intently listen to our speakers and follow the discussions that will then ensue. Please reflect on what you really want to happen to our dear country. You may not feel it, but each of you is an important cog in the overall process. You are our future. And I urge you, please take control of that future. Before I turn you over back to our MC, I would like to acknowledge the leadership of the Good Governance Committee. Liaison Director Terry Magleo, Chairperson Baby Nuesa, Co-Chair and Phoenix Past President Ms. Marivic Españo, Vice Chairs Rod Franco and Cathy Ang. Of course, recognition also goes to our J-Phoenix, Junior Phoenix team, led by Liaison Trustee Benny Soliven, Benny, Chairman E.J. Kwahiansen, good afternoon, Chair, and our Vice Chair, John Balse. Last but definitely not the least, I would like to profusely thank our project leads. Ms. Malu Cristobal, thank you, and Phoenix past President Ms. Judith Lopez. Continued energy and support to you all. And mabuhay ang Phoenix.
Thank you very much, President Mike, for the warm welcome, the very important clarion call. And for you and the Phoenix team, congratulations. Thank you very much for this voters' education and the other good governance initiatives that you have really spearheaded to make the citizenry right, especially at this critical time. So ladies and gentlemen, as we know, we have about 74 days before E-Day, or the elections of May 9, 2022. If this is your first time to vote, I hope you're going to take this vote seriously, this right to suffrage that is given to us all. This is a crucial time for all of us Filipinos, and we are all in this together. Now, this forum in particular aims to emphasize why your vote matters and why it is important to make it right. So to start the ball rolling, allow me to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker is a news and sports anchor at TV5 and One News, a TV and events host, a commercial model, an athlete, and an advocate for the youth and women. She is a woman in action, inspiring us to change and make their communities better, one step and one action at a time. She is a graduate from the Ateneo and recently finished a short course in Harvard. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Gretchen Ho. Hi, Gretchen.
Hi Quintin. Magandang hapon sa lahat ng executives of Phoenix. Good afternoon also to all the students, to everybody, the young ones. Magkakasama tayo lahat dyan. Kind of surprised, 73 days, till the elections, if I heard that right. So the days are passing fast, and lo and behold, hindi natin mamalayan bukas eleksyon na, kaya talagang kailangan na at napapanahon na pag-usapan yung mga ganito. So thank you so much to everybody who is attending, especially to all of our students. I know most of you are probably searching for who you're going to be or who you're going to support in these elections, and you don't need to worry at all, because I remember when I was in your shoes many years ago, and ganyan din ako, na parang excited kung marami dito first time voters. I remember my first time also to vote, and I wanted to make sure it was a wise vote. So lahat ng impormasyon sinubukan nating ikalap para to make an informed decision, and it's actually a very exciting exercise to execute or our right to vote, our right to the democracy that we have, and to be an active citizen. And this year's elections, as you mentioned, has piqued the interest of people from all over the country. We have exceeded our expectations in terms of voters registration, and that's a good sign, I think. But also, we are also in the face of a lot of challenges in the new digital age. Let me share with you my slides. All right. So this was back in 2016, actually. Gaya na sabi ko, I've been very active with the elections. And I think this was also, I'm not sure if this was my second time to vote or first, but they got me before sa ABS-CBN to go around schools to do voters education. So umikot kami ng mga probinsya, and also nagtulong kami ng mobile journalism, and I also did a lot of campaigns online with ABS-CBN. In fact, I had one project with Atom Araulio where we organized this Kwentuhang Millennial para sa Halalan. So naalala ko nung mga panahon na yan, marami nang nagbago. We were trying to do like a wise speak type of talk show, but the things were fast changing, with social media. And years later, I think this was 2016 and now it's 2022, years later, mas marami pang nagbago at talagang ibang-iba na yung landscape. And we have different issues at hand. This one naman was 2019, where we did social media, and what we would do during election day and election coverage, that we would get people's reactions minute by minute and report that on TV. Not just that, also we would get for example, data on which candidate was doing better in which province, and so on and so forth, and which issues were relevant to the young voters most especially. So yan ang toka ko noon sa eleksyon tuwing halalan. And ngayon, I'm doing the news with TV5. I do the morning show. So I'm also tackling, I think, more serious issues now and studying more serious issues, especially with the pandemic, with our return to normal. And siguro ang journey ko bilang isang botante at bilang isang anchor, at talagang dahan-dahan kong inaaral yung mga bagay-bagay. At ang dami ring nagbago sa aking pananaw at ang aking kaalaman. Kung dati, naalala ko kasi may ginawa akong article nung bata pa ako. And I remember going back to it and reading it, and I was very, very idealistic. Not to say that I'm not anymore, but it's now a lot more balanced with realities on the ground. Ang dami kong natutunan sa ilang taon ko sa pagbabalita. Okay, now I'm going to present to you guys 5 questions that I think are very relevant today. I don't want to give you a super hard lecture kasi alam ko sobrang babad na kayo sa impormasyon, pero alam ko the young voters would want some help in navigating through this complicated information overload space that we have, especially now that we are mostly in our homes. We are doing everything digitally. We don't really see what's going on outside there. And many times our perceptions can be influenced by the news, by viral posts, by the troll farms, and everything else. So, 5 tanong lang naman na napaka-simple na tingin ko ay mahalaga sa mga botante, lalong-lalo na sa mga first-time voters natin. So, ito yung unang tanong. Ano ang kulay mo? Okay, ang dami nagtatanong sa akin yan. Ano ang kulay mo? Whenever they would see me outside, Gretch, sino ba susuportahan mo? Anong kulay mo? Parang nagugulat ako kasi, parang teka lang, kailangan ba may kulay ako? Kasi unang-una nasa balita ako, nasa news ako. Pero people, it seems, expect me to have a color. So, ayan, whether pink, red, blue, green, even dilaw, di ba? Usong-uso na yan ngayon. At yan, madalas, ang unang tinatanong sa akin na hindi ko alam kung bakit, but I assume it's also being talked about a lot in other social circles. To the point that, even when I wear colors in my newscast, they make an issue out of it. So I have to explain myself. No, the other day, I was wearing red. Tinatanong nila bakit naka-red ako. So pinost ko to. Sa mga nagtatanong kung bakit ako naka-red kanina, ito yung suot ko ng buong linggo. Diba? Meron blue, may pink, may white. And it's become, the wars when it comes to colors has become quite intense online. And actually, I find this question. This is my partner, Robbie Alampay, on the Big Story in One News. And he tweeted this recently on Twitter, and it got a lot of engagement, a lot of replies. Sabi niya, serious question, and would sincerely want to know how the Leni Robredo campaign and their supporters reflect on and express this. Ano po ba ang pagkakaiba ng pink sa dilaw? So alam ko na hindi naman to sarcastic na comment kasi pinag-uusapan din namin to talaga sa studio. Kung ano nga ba yung pagkakaiba dahil we know na si VP Leni with yung VP bet niya si Kiko Panghilinan, and yung previous tawag dito yung mga kasama mula sa Liberal Party noon, and so on and so forth. It's really a legit question that he wanted to ask people. So ito yung mga questions ito yung mga questions, yung mga response na nakuha ng aking partner. So yung una-una, nakikita nyo ba? Is it clear? Or should I press play? Okay. Sabi dito, this is actually a valid question na hirap din akong i-explain. It depends kung anong dilaw ang tinutukoy mo. Is it the dilaw na represents freedom from dictatorship or dilaw that Duterte started to demonize kahit not related to the Liberal Party? Which one? A seriously stupid question. Clickbait. Here's my retweet. Okay na? Ito, malaki naman po ang pagkakaiba. Talagang literal. Meron pink, meron yellow. Ito naman sabi, some dilawans are kakampinks, but not all kakampinks are dilawans. I'm not a fan of the Aquinos, but I give credit where credit is due, blah, 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 blah. And then this one, I think it's usually automatic that all dilaw are pink, but not all pink were dilaw. Tapos ang pink, mas inclusive, papakinggan lahat, walang kukonsintihing kakampi, gagawing sentrong nasa laylayan. Ito si Sir Manuel L. Quezon, filed under how many angels can dance on the head of a pin and other academic exercises. So, pati, di ba, medyo magulo. I mean, with the pink and the yellow and magulo in short. These are other replies pa from Agot Isidro. People adopted the color yellow. Lenny adopted the color pink. Pink came from the people, not the other way around. To si Inday Espina Varona said, this actually led to a rather deep discussion among folks on Facebook, with them recognizing that it was a valid question that needed to be talked about. And dito ako nagulat. This question, rather surprisingly, was received better on Facebook. And nagulat ako kasi I looked at his Facebook and there were like decent replies. They were really tackling the issue. But on Twitter, marami nang nagbabash o na-agitate dun sa tanong. So, eto, these are the other replies na mapapaisip ka. Serious question, why are you all so hung up on colors? Take away the dilawan, pink, red, rainbow. What does your candidate represent? As a kid who will never understand what yellow and pink looks like, wala akong pake sa kulay. My support is based on merits, as reflected with my Senate line. This should not be a question when we vote based on objectivity and merits. Okay. So, saan nga ba nanggaling? Bakit ang dami-dami nating kulay? Kasi, if we take a look at our political system, we have a multi-party system right now that isn't really very, very strong. What do I mean by that? Marami tayong pabago-bago ng partido. Yung party list natin, there are many representatives who don't really represent the interests of that party list they're supposed to represent. And so, nagkagulo-gulo na yung mga grupo na yon, that it has become, more of political alliances rather than principle-based parties, which is what it's supposed to be. So, kung ang unang tanong, ano ang kulay mo, hindi ba mas mahalaga ang tanong na ito? Ano ang mahalaga sa iyo? Imbis na sa kulay tayo nakafocus, hindi ba mas magandang tanong ito? Ano ang mahalaga sa iyo? Kung paiba-iba tayo ng mga pananaw, di ba? Paano tayo magkakasundo? Sige, sabihin natin lahat tayo red o lahat tayo pink o lahat tayo blue. Kung iba-iba rin sa loob ng mga partidong iyon, paano tayo magkakasundo at paano ba natin maiintindihan ng isa't isa? Tingin ko mas mahalaga itong tanong na ito, ano ba ang mahalaga sa iyo? Your values. So, how do you decide who to vote for? For those who are not first-time voters, how did you decide who to vote for back in 2016, 2019? And way beyond pa. Did you decide based on gut feel? Did you decide based on image or name recognition? Para sa mga hindi kilala kung sino ang councilor sa kanilang distrito o kilala yung mga nasa party list, how did you decide? Do you vote based on connections? Sinong kilala ko? Kanino ako pwedeng humingi ng tulong? Did you vote or will you vote according to family vote? Kung anong napag-uusapan niyo sa pamilya niyo? Because sometimes it's also like that. Nagboboto yung mga pamilya ng isang block. Is your vote influenced also by your community, by your barangay? By bloodline, because I've heard also some people want to vote because kamag-anak o taga norte siya, for example, will you vote according to the candidate's relatability or credentials, or because you have the same value system? I think this is something that's very important for us to deliberate on before we get to the ballot, to the election day itself. Ano ba ang mahalaga sa akin, and how will I decide who to vote for? Okay. What values do you stand for? Speaking of values, do I value accountability, transparency, action-oriented leadership? Do I value somebody who has a lot of experience, credentials, who has, done a lot of work here and there? Do I value somebody, somebody who has the youth, but also the energy to create change and affect change in traditional systems? Where do you stand on issues, particularly on these popular issues na napag-uusapan yan sa mga debate? Drug war, national defense, public health, media freedom. Pabor ba ako na, for example, yung mga nangyayari sa ating media ngayon? Labor, where do I stand? Where do you personally stand on these issues? Napakinggan nyo na ba kung ano ang mga sinasabi ng mga kandidato pagdating sa mga issue na ito? And the last one is, where do you want our country to go? What are your aspirations for the country? Ano ba nakikita niyong pupuntahan ng ating bansa? Marami akong mga kaibigan who, to be honest, are thinking of migrating out of the Philippines or have started the process of moving out of the country. But for those who, are here and are really believing in the future of this country, what changes do you want to see? I think it's important to dream for our country. It's important to be able to know that within yourself and to understand the potential of the Philippines and where it can go. So we also know who dahil madalas pagdating sa politika natin, ang napag-uusapan natin yung mga controversy. Pero tayong kabataan, tayong pasimula pa lang sa buhay, napakahalaga na habang bata tayo ay ma-form na natin sa sarili natin at ma-solidify natin kung ano yung klase ng pagmamahal natin para sa ating bansa. Ano yung nakikita nating potensyal? And when you go around the country, what do you see when you take a look at the Philippines? And it's important to start with that so you can also safeguard your vote and care about national issues and not just put them to the side, which is the easier thing to do, to just think about your own business and your own family and your own welfare instead of really participating in national issues. So as young as now, I invite all of you to think about these things. What values do you stand for? Where do you stand on issues? And where do you envision our country to go? Okay, ito, yung nakikita niyo sa screen niyo, ito yung driver ko at saka yung PA ko. We always have conversations. I mean, when we go home or when we get to work, tinatanong ko sa kanila. Kasi parang sila yung market research ko eh. Kung ano yung kung parang anong tingin nila dito sa kandidato na ito, sino bang malakas ngayon, sino malakas sa masa, ano yung mga nag-a-appeal sa kanila. So, para sa kanila, minsan nakakwento nila, gusto nila si ganito kasi malakas sa social media eh. Parang astig siya eh. Okay, cool eh. Minsan, sinasabi rin nila sa akin kasi itong candidate na ito, mukhang kaya tayong iahon mula sa kahirapan. Mukhang ano siya, malakas ang dating. powerful, may kakayahan. Ito parang ang hina ng dating. Ganon ang mga reason nila. So, if you contrast it to your, criteria and the way that you choose your candidates to other people outside your socio-economic zone, ibang-iba yung criteria din nila ng pagpili. So, mahalagang pakinggan din natin yon. And other things that influence their vote, local politics for sure. Sino ba yung nararamdaman ko sa aking komunidad, sa aking barangay? Kanino ako nakakatanggap ng ayuda? Sino yung lumalapit sa amin? Napakahalaga noon para sa kanila. And it's important also to understand that dynamic. So we also understand what plays into decision of people who are different from us and the people that we get to meet every day. Yan, bloodline, as I've mentioned, can also be a factor in the way they choose their candidates. At ito, napakasimple lang, sinabi nila sa akin recently. Gusto nilang subukan si candidate A. Sabi ko, bakit? Wala, masubukan lang. Maiba naman. Ganun lang kasimple. Wala nang masyadong pagkalkal ng malalim sa mga issue na mahalaga sa taong bayan o kaya sa madalas nating pinag-uusapan. Which means and highlights the need for voters education. When you say voters education, it's, we all know we need that. We all know we need to a more educated electorate. But it's also not easy with the way, things are in our country, the resources that we have, and with the proliferation of disinformation, which leads us to our third relevant question, sino nga ba ang nagsasabi ng totoo? So kung dati binabantayan natin yung boto natin na on election day na hindi tayo ma-bribe or binabantayan natin that there's no cheating, ngayon we need to protect the information that we receive. It's not just about protecting your vote, but protecting the information that you receive prior to election day. And these have become words that have been very, very important in today's age. Fake news, misinformation, disinformation, confirmation bias, echo chambers, and troll farms. So talagang ibang-iba na yung landscape. And let me just invite you to watch a short video to remind you of what these terms exactly mean.
There has never been a time in human history where information is as readily available as it is today. But with so much information living online, new issues arise. Misinformation, disinformation, and something known as confirmation bias, which is a cognitive bias where we seek out information to prove what we already thought to be true. For example, despite the research behind and availability of safe vaccines, there are an unknown number of websites preaching the dangers behind them. What has concerningly followed is measles cases in the United States reaching the highest level in 25 years. Climate change remains a highly polarized political issue, with some denying the problem is real, despite proven research. And there is a new term we all know.
You are fake news. Go ahead.
Technology has brought us to a point where we can no longer believe everything we hear, read, or even see. In 2018, misinformation was to blame for fueling chaos, confusion, violence, and death in Myanmar. It triggered mob attacks that left dozens dead in India. Experts are calling this current era information disorder. Its main contributors are misinformation, which is when false information is shared without the intention to harm, and disinformation, when false information is knowingly shared to cause harm.
Disinformation takes many forms. Sometimes it's a manipulated photograph. Sometimes it's a rumor that people might share with you face to face. Maybe it's a conspiracy theory that you might find on a platform like YouTube. There are many different elements to it.
But propaganda, rumors, and conspiracy theories are far from new. Some say the moon landing was a hoax or that Elvis and Tupac are still alive. But what makes the current phenomenon of disinformation different from the past is how quickly it spreads from one platform to another, and how easy it is to produce. from places like the Russian troll factory.
We've now had a means by which anybody can create fabricated content really, really easily. So I could set up a website today with any sort of domain. I can use very clever photoshopping techniques to manipulate an image. I can circulate a rumor through a family Facebook Messenger group, and all of a sudden this can travel like wildfire.
And while research has shown that YouTube played a major part in convincing some people that the earth is flat, technology isn't the only factor to blame in all of this. There is also a growing distrust for science and institutions.
We like to blame Facebook, we like to blame WhatsApp, but we also have to recognize that particularly over the last 20 years, many people's lives look quite different. There's still the impact of the global financial crisis on many people around the world. There are fears around climate change. There are concerns about how these shifts in immigration are going to affect local communities. And so there are lots of things right now that people are concerned about. And because they're concerned, they're looking to politicians and they're not necessarily seeing strong political institutions. They're looking to the news media and they're worried that the news media isn't necessarily telling them the whole story.
Social media giants like Facebook, Twitter, and Google have promised to curb misinformation on topics like vaccines. So legitimate news sources are prioritized instead of posts with higher engagement.
So as you can see, we have a lot more problems that we're facing now that are challenging our electoral systems and our democracy. And it's not just our votes that we need to safeguard. Once again, we need to safeguard our truth, our information, the information that we get. So ano nga ba? How do we know what's true online when we see it? Apart from our fact checkers, apart from our news media, it's important to understand that it's not just about facts, because we keep on talking about facts. But facts with the wrong context is also not the truth. For example, George drinks every day. He drinks in the morning, he drinks in the afternoon, he even drinks at night. George can't sleep well. He's been having problems lately. This is the truth, right? These are facts. But without the proper context, iba na yung meaning niya. So, what's the proper context? If you put coffee in, George drinks coffee every day. He drinks in the morning. He drinks coffee in the afternoon. He even drinks coffee at night. George can't sleep well. He's been having problems lately. So now we have a different take on George, just because we have a different context. So when we put out facts or when we read about facts, make sure that it is in the proper context. It's not just the responsibility of those in the media, those in the news. I think it's everybody's personal responsibility to understand if the facts that we get every day have the proper context or is surrounded by the proper context. So in an individual capacity, I know that institutions are now being challenged. Mainstream media is under attack. Governments also. It's now a fight between governments and mainstream media, and a fight for truth, a fight for facts, a fight for knowing what is real and what is not. In our own spheres and in our own platforms, we can protect the truths that we proliferate and the truths that we accept and the facts that we put out there by making sure they have the proper context around them. Pang-apat na mahalagang tanong, paano ba makikipag-diskusyon? So this is another thing that's been very, very difficult nowadays, discourse. Have you ever been in a table with people with political differences? Because in my family, we do have a polarity of political beliefs. So my brother is a Lacson supporter. My other brother is a Lenny supporter. My parent is a Duterte supporter and a Marcos supporter. Ako, secret. But, diba? it's kind of hard when you have different political beliefs, but that's the beauty of democracy. You know, we can't impose our beliefs on somebody if they think differently or if they believe differently. But what we can do is protect our facts and our history and our truths. Just so to give you an example, during the pandemic, my dad was super afraid of vaccines. But since we have a doctor in the family, it became quite easier to debunk all of the beliefs that he got from Viber groups and Facebook Messenger and Facebook communities. So it all starts right there at the dinner table, at the family table, in our own homes. Do we promote discourse? Do we promote civil disagreements? Are civil disagreements still possible? Is it still possible in the online space? When you get to the online space, do you go there with the judgment already on everybody who is not within the political spectrum that you are in? Do you respect other people's beliefs? Yun muna, dun muna tayo magsimula. Because if we start off already closed off to hearing other people, how can we find common ground to actually be able to convince somebody to, you know, vote for this person and otherwise? Kung sarado na tayo sa isa't isa, paano ba tayo magkakaroon ng kaintindihan? Because the colors, as you've seen and as I've mentioned, it's not all black and white. It's not when you're pink, when you're red. We all have different beliefs as individuals because of the different backgrounds that we have. And so in a democracy, it's also important to have civil disagreements. So kung ito yung kulay na sinasabi nila, hindi ba ang democracy medyo ganito ang itsura? And do we have room to accept people from different backgrounds? Because it starts there. Conversations start there. Healthy conversations start there. Can we still have conversations without mudslinging, resulting to that? And because here in this organization, you are finance people, I'm sure this question is important for you. I mean, not just this particular issue, but sabi dito, we are in dire need of facts, particularly as the elections approach. Thinking has to be fed, judgment improve, and as someone said, in a democracy, people have a right to change their minds. And without accountability, there can be no good governance. So can we all agree on that? Without accountability, mahirap magkaroon ng good governance. Without transparency, without, you know, these values, without us being transparent about what is happening to the money that we have with the government. So, democracy, there should be room for thinking to be fed, for judgment to be improved, and for people to change their minds. And the last question that I think, after the discourse that is relevant, ano ang magagawa ko? We move now to action after discourse. What can I actually do beyond just voting, but also safeguarding democracy, safeguarding information, safeguarding my vote? Okay, first, of course, participate in forums and debates. Have you been watching the different debates and forums in different networks? Ito note na sa ABS-CBN yan. Of course, and this one is this coming Sunday, CNN presidential debate. And just confirmed today, the COMELEC organized debate on March 19 will be attended by all presidential bets. So, meron po kayong lahat. And if you do take notes like these, mapapansin ninyo yung common themes that they keep on repeating. So, iba talaga kapag you're a lot more conscious about what these candidates stand for and what they keep on repeating and what they keep on saying, and you notice patterns and you become a smarter voter in many ways. Second, you can participate in the fact-checking campaigns. This is a hashtag Facts First PH. I think your organization is also part of this. TV5 is also part of this. One News, the different I think student organizations are also part of this. We can all help each other safeguard our facts. And it shouldn't just be one way. We can also fact check the fact checkers. 'Di ba? Lahat naman kasi tayo ay nagkakamali din o kulang eh. Pero alam natin, we all understand and we all come from that same notion. Here, while we can disagree on who to vote for in the 2022 elections, we can all agree that an election cannot be inundated by lies. We need the truth. We need to protect our facts. And the third, you can also contribute information on our candidates. If you go to eboto.ph, this is actually a platform that provides you with information on our candidates. You can find the different presidentiables. You can contribute information on your local candidates that are not there. I think this is a huge step towards having something centralized and fact-checked by different organizations, because back in 2016, back in 2019, I had to do all of my own notes on a different separate paper. If we have, more of these platforms that put everything together, even the candidates stand on issues, it would make our electorate a lot more educated about what the relevant issues are, instead of just voting based on personality and popularity and image. Dun sa website ng eboto.ph, you can go there. This is actually organized by a non-profit organization, Pinas Forward. There are also surveys, but we guided them when it comes to doing their surveys. And always remember that when you do see surveys on TV, that surveys are just a snapshot. They should not be the basis, because trends are not permanent. That's according to Okta research. Kailangan natin tignan ng mabuti kung sino ba ang nagpagawa ng survey na yon, why they had the surveys commissioned, which period in time they had the surveys commissioned, and what platform they used, which respondents they got for the surveys. And sabi dito ng Pulse Asia ni Ronnie Holmes, our own surveys show that surveys do not influence voting behavior, but they should guide people in terms of influencing others. So these surveys are just, something to help us understand what issues are relevant to the Filipino people and what message should be sent and which areas should be targeted when it comes to influencing people on who to vote for. Yan ang kailangan natin maintindihan when we do see surveys. Yung social media surveys, medyo hindi talaga reliable yan, because iba-iba yung crowd pagdating sa Twitter, pagdating sa Facebook, and also the methodologies can be quite unreliable. Voters education, of course, it starts in the family. So I saw this tweet that said, all my kids are of voting age, printed sample ballots for them to get familiar with candidates and forms. They must read and research the candidates, including local positions and party lists. We'll have a pitch and debate party soon. Nais ko magpalaki ng mabuting mamamayan. So it starts in the family. For those who are parents here, it's also your responsibility to educate the young ones and start them young on how to vote and how to go through the electoral process. But what I've also learned through the years, it's not just about knowing the electoral processes. Being, I think it's a continuing education as you grow older into being a citizen of this democracy. Awareness of how government works is very important. Knowing the roles of your councilors, mayors, congressmen, senators, understanding how political parties work, the party list system works, what the flaws are, sino nga ba yung mga tumatakbo, sino ba yung may kakayahang tumakbo, bakit nga ba sila paulit-ulit, bakit nga ba sila nakakailang termino, the relationship of national and local government, understanding that, and understanding also which issues are relevant to the Filipino people. So medyo, as you go along, it's important to understand these concerns, and it's not just about your own decision. While it does play a powerful role. Being able to understand how the whole system works makes you smarter also in influencing other people on who to vote for. So, babalikan natin yung 5 tanong. Ano ang kulay mo? Hindi ba mas maganda yung tanong, ano ba ang mahalaga sa'yo? Ano ba ang mahalaga sa iba? Sino ba ang nagsasabi ng totoo? Paano nga ba tayo makikipagdiskusyon ngayon? At ano ang magagawa ko? So just to end, this is my co-worker, Lord De Vera. So we all know he's a brilliant historian. And I caught him in the studio. He was doing a lot of research, not with Google, but with this book of old magazines. I think now in this time, more than ever, it's important to revisit history, to be able to understand and read about it beyond what we see in online articles, beyond what we see on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram. Magsipag tayo ng konti para magbasa, mag-aral. Alamin natin yung pinanggalingan natin. Because sabi nga nila, di ba, if you don't remember history, you are bound to repeat it. And we need not go far with history. Just looking at the pandemic, looking at how we dealt with the pandemic, how government dealt with the pandemic. Let's not forget all the things. Like, I think these are relevant words. Dolomite, face shield, lockdowns, vaccines, ayuda, contact tracing, bike lanes, Typhoon Ulysses, Typhoon Odette, health workers, and these images, they say a lot. Kayo na lang siguro magsabi kung ano yung paniniwala nyo pagdating dito. But let's not go far. Even just remembering how our leaders, local, national, performed during the pandemic can contribute so much to the way that you vote this May 9. Huwag nating kalimutan, tandaan natin, masyado tayong makalimutin at yan ang isa sa mga flaws natin bilang Pinoy. Huwag din natin hayaan na lumipas ng lumipas yung panahon na nakakalimutan natin lahat at inuulit-ulit lang natin. Let's be smarter voters. And this one, I understood, in the pandemic also, I had a chance to work with different LGUs and different organizations. And I figured out during my time doing this bike drive, it was called Donate a Bike, Save a Job. We were able to raise funds for 1,500 bicycles for frontliners, for the unemployed in less than 2 years. And I understood, I think the most important learning for me doing this project was, kaya naman pala natin to have something that works for the people. If somebody like me, an ordinary citizen, I'm not super rich nor famous, but I was able to raise funds for 1,500 people. Just imagine what government can do. Just imagine what local government can do. Just imagine what voting for the right people can do. It's not just going to be 1,500. It's going to be more than that. And it's going to be felt by the people if we do elect the right leaders. So, tandaan natin, yung naramdaman natin nung pandemic, receiving the ayuda, and the suffering that we had during the lockdowns. Let's remember all of that and see how government works and how impactful our choices are to our future. I know this is a pretty, dati sa totoo lang, and I speak from the heart. Dati sa totoo lang, super talagang idealistic ko. Now a little bit tempered na yan. But this is what I stand up for. Sabi dito ni Abraham Lincoln, I'm not bound to win, but I am bound to be true. I am not bound to succeed, but I am bound to live up to what light I have. We may not be able to change systems overnight. We may not be able to change how this government works in one election. We may not be able to change it in the next 6 years, but let's live up to our values, our principles, what we want where we want our country to go. Let's do it step by step, and let's do it in our own circles, starting in our own homes, our communities, our classrooms, the people that we talk to. Mahirap yung laban. As you can see, we're fighting against disinformation. We're fighting against troll armies. But it's not impossible. We may not be bound to win, but we are bound to be true and to live up to the light that we have as voters and as Filipinos. So yun lang naman, simple lang naman. And good luck with May 9 with the elections. Let's all safeguard our vote. Let's all safeguard our knowledge. And remember that even if we are of different colors, we have common ground. We have, we want the best for the Filipinos. We want the best for our country. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gretchen, for that encouraging and powerful message. And more importantly, for the questions you asked to help us go beyond the touch points and everyday conversation into what really matters, so we have the kind of critical thinking that can make really informed decisions, especially with this important election. So thank you very much again, Gretchen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker will actually be joining us via recording, and he's all the way in Sulu. Actually, he's gladly taking the time to record a powerful message as well. Let me introduce him, first of all. He is a multi-awarded journalist and documentarist, and he hosts an award-winning documentary on GMA Network that tackles pressing social issues and areas of public interest. After joining GMA 7 in September 2017, he became one of the hosts of Eyewitness, the country's most awarded and longest-running documentary program. He also anchors The State of the Nation, a nightly news program on GTV, and creates short features for Vice Media Group. He's an experienced reporter who has previously worked with ABS-CBN Integrated News, and he is also the National Goodwill Ambassador for UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency. He is also currently the co-founder of FYT, a community-oriented independent media organization. Let's hear it from Atom Araulio. Can we get the volume, please?
Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Atom Araulio, isang mamamahayag. At gusto ko po sanang makasama kayo ng live sa pagtitipong ito, ngunit kailangan po tayong mag-cover sa malayong lugar na walang internet. Kaya hayaan niyo po akong ibahagi na lamang sa inyo ang isang maiksing recorded message. Naging mahirap po ang nakaraang mga taon para sa ating lahat. Dahil sa pandemya, nabaliktad ang buhay natin. Merong mga nawalan ng trabaho at may mga nawalan din ng mga mahal sa buhay. Bilang isang mamamahayag, matinding pagsubok din ang aming kinaharap. Hindi lamang dahil sa banta sa aming kalusugan tuwing lumalabas kami para gumawa ng mga istorya, kundi dahil sa isa pang malalim na hamon ng ating panahon. Ito po yung pagkalat ng misinformation at disinformation na minsang tinatawag din nating fake news. Ang misinformation at disinformation ay ang sadyang pagpapakalat ng maling impormasyon at ito po ay malaking dagok sa malayang pamamahayag dahil sadyang nagiging mahirap kumbinsihin ang mga tao sa katotohanan kung lulunurin ito sa dagat ng kasinungalingan. Ito rin po ay nakakamatay. Kamakailan halimbawa, nagsagawa kami ng isang forum tungkol sa pagpapabakuna kontra COVID-19. At nakakagulat at nakababahala ang nakuha naming mga komento sa social media. Ito po yung ilan sa mga halimbawa. Basahin ko na para sa inyo. May mga nagsabi na ang mga gumagawa ng mga bakuna ay ang Illuminati na layong bawasan ang populasyon ng mundo. Sabi naman ng isa, turok now, magkakasakit later sa bakunang experimental. At meron din nagsabi na inyo na ang devil vax nyo, ang amin ay ang faith namin. Meron pang hashtag patay kung patay. Ang pagkalat po ng disinformation sa internet ay maituturing na ring pandemic. Tinatawag na nga itong infodemic. Wala po itong pinipili. Even educated and otherwise discerning people can fall for it. So paano po natin naharapin ang problemang ito? Mahabang usapan po yan at maaaring hindi ito ang pagkakataon para ibahagi sa inyo ang lahat ng aking nalalaman at hindi ko rin naman alam ang lahat ng sagot. But let me tell you what I learned through the years of working in media. So journalism is primarily the business of truth-telling. It starts with gathering and verifying facts. There are a lot of skills that I learned as a student of science. I studied physics in UP Diliman that I still use today as a journalist. Kaya po lagi ko sinasabi na ang siyensya at ang journalism ay magpinsan. The scientific process, critical thinking, healthy skepticism, presentation of findings in an organized manner, and arriving at a logical conclusion are all abilities that are also good for journalism. To be a good journalist, we need to have a scientific mind. But getting the facts is only half the struggle. It is also important to tell a story. Mas makapangyarihan po ang kwento kaysa sa numero. Emotions move people, not facts. And this is the reason why outright lies can be so effective, because they appeal to our emotion. And that emotion is often fear. And so the business of truth-telling is also the business of storytelling. It is not only important to show the facts, but also to get people to listen. Finally, social media has really changed our information landscape dramatically, maybe even permanently. This is an age when anyone can do what a professional journalist does. Dahil bawat status update, bawat litrato, like at share natin, may potensyal na makaapekto sa buhay ng marami. Minsan nga mas pinakikinggan pa ang mga internet celebrities kaysa sa mga mamamahayag o mga eksperto. We can and should use social media as a force for good rather than for evil as peddlers of disinformation. The principles of journalism are increasingly becoming relevant to everyone, whether you're a reporter, a vlogger, or just a casual user of social media. We should always strive for truthfulness, for fairness and accountability. Idagdag na rin natin dyan ng empathy at ang humanity. Courage in journalism is not just about going to dangerous places, covering typhoons or conflict, or suffering threats from people in power. It is also having the guts to know where to stand on issues. The business of truth-telling requires it. Tulad ng lagi kong sinasabi, the truth is never neutral. Similarly, we can be courageous citizens by standing for truth, rejecting historical revisionism, promoting science and a scientific culture, being responsible users of social media, and by holding on to our humanity and empathy when dealing with others. Yun lamang po, maraming salamat sa pagkakataong ito at mabuhay kayong lahat.
Thank you very much, Atom. I mean, I think it's a very powerful message when you talk about truth-telling needs to be, kailangan sumama talaga yung storyteller mo, and more importantly, the empathy of how to tell those stories to a voting population that is so hungry for information in light of the fake news and disinformation that you mentioned earlier. So thank you very much again, Atom, and all the best with your journalism. Our next speaker is the private sector co-chairman of the National Competitiveness Council, a public-private partnership body that develops strategy for the long-term competitiveness of the Philippines through policy reforms, project implementation, institution building, and performance monitoring. He's an associate director at Ayala Corporation and the chief resilient officer and advisor for the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation, or PDRF. He also serves as the member of the advisory board of the Asian New Zealand Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, Guillermo Bill Luz. Hi, Bill.
Good afternoon, Quintin, and thank you very much to Phoenix for inviting me to speak today on a topic that is very dear to my heart. Let me just share my screen first of all. Okay, before I start my presentation, I had some poll questions prepared just to get an idea. Everyone can get an idea of what the room is like. So maybe let's start with the first poll question, if we could post it up. Okay, so let's go to the first question. Are you a registered voter for the 2022 elections on May 9th? So it's single choice. It's yes or no. Are you a registered voter for the 2022 elections? Okay, then as you answer that, do you plan to vote on May 9th? Yes, no, or you're undecided, still thinking about it. And then the third question is, have you decided already on whom you will vote for as president on May 9th? And when I say have you decided already, is have you made a choice as of today? It's yes, I have a definite choice already. Not yet, I'm still thinking about it. And then there's a fourth question, which has to do with the vice president. Have you decided already on whom you will vote for as vice president on May 9th? As of today, yes, I have a definite choice already. Not yet, I'm still thinking about it. Okay, has everyone been able to answer the 4 questions? If so, can we see the responses to the questions? Okay, well, this is great news. Of this audience, and most of you have responded in the audience, the majority of you anyway, 96% are registered voters, 4% are not registered voters. And as you will see, I will still stress what you can do even if you're not registered. Do you plan to vote? Definitely 93% have decided they will vote. 3% still say no, and 4% are undecided and still thinking about it. Let's go to questions 3 and 4. Have you already decided who you will vote for as president and vice president on May 9th? Can we see the response to questions 3 and 4?
Hi, sir. It's already on the screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't see it. Can you
Okay.
I can't see it. Can you just explain what the answers are?
Okay, sir. For number 3, have you decided already on whom you will vote for as president on May 9? 68% answered yes, and 32% answered not yet. I'm still thinking about it. For the fourth question, have you decided already on whom you will vote for as vice president on May 9? Yes, I have a definite choice, 50%, and not yet. I am still thinking about it, 50%.
Okay, great. Thanks. So let's remember those answers and we'll bring it up again as I go through my presentation. So thanks for inviting me today, Phoenix. And let me, oh wait, I gotta stop sharing for a minute. Okay, so the election, something that's very, very important for us. And let me open with a saying that has been repeated many times. No one is quite sure who created it, and I'll paraphrase it. It's all it takes for evil to succeed is for good men and women to do nothing. So that's kind of an underlying principle I'd like to leave everyone with. Let's start. I'll give you an outline of what I plan to cover. I'll talk a little bit about our voter profile, and then topics will include what makes a candidate winnable, in quotes, the fallacy of the lesser evil vote, the myth of the wasted vote, surveys, are they a reflection or influencer of public opinion, and then the real challenge that we are hiring someone to run the country, and we're running many people to actually run the country at every level, and then how I decide who I will vote for and what you can do. So let's start first with a profile of Filipino voters. We have 65.7 million registered voters for the 2022 elections. 45% will come from rest of Luzon, and NCR will have 11%. So 56% will come from Luzon in total, including the 11% from NCR. 24% will come from Mindanao, 20% will come from the Visayas. From a socioeconomic point of view, the socioeconomic D class, 75% will make up the voter base. 11% would be ABC, and 14% would be the E class. So the D class will really be the ones making the decision as to who will lead the country for the next 6 years. Educational attainment, we can see this. No formal education, 21%. Some high school, 14%. And completed high school, 36%. So about 2/3 have between the no formal education, elementary graduate, all the way to completed high school. 7% have vocational. Some college education, 11%, and another 11% will have completed college or done some post-grad work. So that is the split as far as educational attainment is concerned. Filipino voters by locale, urban, it'll be 49% urban and 51% rural as far, so it's about almost a 50-50 split. By religious affiliation, 85% are Roman Catholic, only 1% are Iglesia, even though Iglesia gets a lot of press time and airtime as to who they will endorse and that they supposedly make or break candidates. They're only 1% of the vote. The Islamic vote is 5%, born again 2%, Baptist 1%, Protestant 1%, and then the rest are others. So it's 85% basically Roman Catholic. Now, there is no organized Roman Catholic vote, but from what we know in the past, the Catholic vote is good at working against someone rather than for someone. So they're more, when they vote for someone, it's more dispersed, but when they vote against someone, it can be quite focused. Gender, it's going to be 52% male, 48% female. That's the split for 2022, but it's not been that way all the time. And by age group, and you can track yourself, where are you on this wheel? 13%, 18 to 24 years old, 19%, 25 to 34, 17%, 35 to 44. So that's roughly 50% in that segment from 18 to 44 years old. And then 21%, 45 to 54, 18%, 55 to 64, and 12% seniors, so 65 and up. So I suspect, of course, most of you are in that slice of the 18 to 24 slice of the market in this age group wheel. Now, if we take a look at the last election, 2016, 62% registered voters, 76% actually voted, and 24% did not. But remember, the presidency and the vice presidency were not at stake. So this is usually a lower figure than in an election year for president and vice president, when it could be as high as 85% actually voting. And based on the numbers in the survey, most of you are registered, 96, 97%, and most of you intend to vote. So that's a pattern we're seeing that reflects the high interest in the elections that Gretchen had mentioned earlier. And in the last election, there were more female voters than male voters. So it's a bit different in this particular elections, and even the turnout more female than male. So that gives you the voter profile. So let me go on the first topic of winnability. And this is a discussion that I hear oftentimes from people saying, well, you know, I don't want to vote for someone because that person is not winnable. The survey says this person is not winnable. Well, the only person who can make a candidate winnable are the voters. Voters make those candidates winnable. And if you vote according to survey results, what you are doing is you are voting, you're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're simply reinforcing a trend. So if you use a survey to kind of influence your decision, that's more or less what's going to happen. Now, how accurate do surveys reflect real sentiment? There are surveys and there are surveys, and it depends on the sampling method and the questions and all that. But there are some factors at work which are not always visible, no matter how scientifically done a survey is. The first is the social desirability bias. That affects survey results. And social desirability bias is that works this way. Some people vote because in the back of their minds, they are thinking, what are my neighbors, what are my friends, what are my family voting like? So they think, what are others thinking? And then they try to adjust to that thinking because they don't want to stick out. The second is there's a climate of fear. And the third is there's a bit of a creation of a herd behavior. So all these are at play, but cannot be measured in the surveys that you see. But keep them in the back of your mind that these factors are at work to varying degrees. Now, after people talk about winnability, there are always people say, well, I can't decide who I'm going to vote for. It's so hard to make a decision. So if I'm going to make a choice, I'm going to choose the lesser evil. Okay. So the basic assumption here is, of course, all or most of the candidates are evil. And therefore, I'm pushed to make a choice. I'll go for that lesser evil. But in this election, that's clearly not the case. There are good candidates and there are not so good candidates. And some candidates clearly much better than others, depending on the criteria that you set for voting, whether you're looking at competence, qualifications, integrity, honesty, all these factors that you make part of your criteria, then you will see that not everybody's evil. So the lesser evil vote is really I think a non-argument. The third argument I hear most often is the wasted vote. And this ties to the winnability and the argument. No? The basic argument goes like this. The candidate I want to vote for will lose because they're doing so poorly in the survey. Thus, my vote is a wasted vote. And I do not want to waste my vote. But that's counterproductive. Because if you end up voting for someone else, you unwittingly help that candidate while your real choice loses. Again, this goes back to the self-fulfilling prophecy of following this winnability and wasted vote argument. The real wasted vote is the one where you went against your real choice, or you boycotted, or you abstained from voting. Because at the end of the day, you have to remember, elections are all about math. They're all about arithmetic. It's all about addition. So abstentions and boycotts just lower the threshold for winning. So the fewer people vote, actually the easier it is for bad candidates to win in an election. So, don't waste that vote. Actually go out and vote for who you want to vote for, who you feel is the best for the country. That is the ultimate criteria, I think, that we need to be looking at. Now, on the surveys, we always ask ourselves, are they reflecting public opinion or are they influencing public opinion? So several things to remember about surveys. First of all, is the timing. These surveys are taken typically once a month, maybe more frequently as we get closer to the election. So consider these as snapshots. And the snapshot is typically 1 week in a month. So it's important to look at the dates of surveys. The second is that there are different types of surveys. The first are randomized, scientifically designed surveys, where the sampling are statistically randomized among a population that reflects classes A, B, C, D, and E. And these are surveys of registered voters, not surveys of just anybody. And then there's another type of survey, which are sort of self-selected samples, the type that you might see on social media, by the different traditional media organizations, and self-selected because only the people who answer the surveys actually go and answer these surveys, regardless of whether they're voter or non-voter, because there's no way to verify that. So the results are very different. Okay, so in a randomized survey, you can statistically infer or project to the larger population. But in the self-selected sample, it just gives you the snapshot of that sample. So if 1,000 people answer that survey, yeah, it reflects the 1,000 people, but it doesn't reflect the general population. The third thing to remember is that many people might still change their mind on who they will vote for. And in fact, when we took the polls earlier on, not everyone has made up their mind on who they will vote for. In fact, right now, it's running almost 50% of the people in these statistically randomized surveys say they might change their mind. So they have a choice, but they might change their mind. So don't confuse the undecided from those who are changing their mind. The guys who are changing their mind already have a choice as of today, but they're open to switching their vote in the last 75, 70 days, 30 days, 45 days as we get closer to elections. But one thing to remember is that it's almost half willing to change their minds. And so when you decide who to vote for, do you ask yourself, are you basing it on surveys or are you basing it on your own criteria? And ultimately, this is the most important vote after all, is one based on your own criteria on what you think, who you think is good for the country. So the real challenge is that we are hiring voters, we, the population, we are hiring somebody. In this case, we're hiring a CEO to run this country for the next 6 years, or we're hiring a mayor or a governor or a congressman or a senator. Their decisions will have impact beyond the 3 years or the 6 years that they hold office, because policies tend to have a longer life than the terms of the politicians who created them. So we have to ask ourselves, how much care do we exercise in selecting leaders for our own organizations, whether it's a student organization, an NGO, a business, a faith-based organization, but how much care do we exercise in selecting those leaders? And what are we really looking for in our leaders? And all of us have, whether we know it or not, we have our own personal choices or criteria on how we go around selecting people. So I'll go and speak a little bit about kind of my personal approach. One thing is to remember is that typically when you are being interviewed for a job, or when we are interviewing people for a job, we tend to make that hiring decision on the basis of competence and qualifications. But very often, we fire them on the basis of behavior, not on competence or qualifications, but we fire them because we observe behavior, and behavior we don't like. So when we hire, we need to be looking at both competence, competence/qualifications, and of course, behavior. So these are how I make my own vote decisions. Personally, it's something that you might want to choose. Now, when I was young, of course, I was on the opposite end. I was the one being interviewed for work. And as I progressed in my career, I was the one doing the interviewing to make decisions who to bring on board for work. So this is how I use it when I select a president, for instance, or a vice president, but most importantly, the president. And divide my criteria into two: qualifications and disqualifications. So for qualifications, I typically always look at integrity, persons who are not corrupt. I look at values. I consider their work ethic. Of course, their skill, their competence, especially in management, their executive skills. Are they good for the country? That's a key question I ask in my mind. Is the person I'm voting for going to do good and is good for the country? And also, I tell myself that I don't have to agree with all of their policy decisions or policy positions. We may disagree on some, we probably agree on most, but I don't think everything is 100% agreement in order to vote for somebody, because life doesn't really work that way. Even with your own friends, with our friends, we don't agree 100% with them, but of course, they still remain friends because we believe in their integrity, their values, their work ethic, their management skill, and that they are good people. But aside from qualifications, there are disqualifications. And let me just, I write a lot of referral letters, recommendation letters, and fill out referral forms for my former staff who move on to other government agencies. And I used to work for a government council. And these are just two actual questions that pop up in forms sent to me to answer about a person. Okay. And in this case, both are from NEDA. And here's the specific question. Do you have knowledge of he or she has ever been charged in any civil, criminal, or administrative body? Remember, they're just asking charged, not even convicted. And this is a government agency hiring people at all levels of that agency. And they also ask, can you trust him or her with money matters? So if this should matter to companies and this should matter to government agencies like NEDA, shouldn't it matter to the presidency, the vice presidency, the senatorial posts, the congressional posts? These are actual questions. So when you pick somebody, you're not only looking at their qualifications, but you have to look at the disqualifications, because the disqualification should be the deal breaker. If they have that disqualification, red flags are up. You better be very careful about who you're voting for. So let me close by suggesting maybe a few things, what we can all do and what you can do. Number one, of course, is vote. And I'm happy to see that many are registered and planning to vote. Number two is make the right choices. There's still time. We have about 74, 75 days to go. So there's time to study your options, all the candidates, and make a decision. Then there's plenty time to convince other people about who your choices are and why you think they're the right choices for the country. So even if you are not a registered voter, you can exercise that responsibility to convince other people. It's too late to register, but not too late to convince other people to make the right choice. And then, of course, protect your vote. That's so important because you do have to cast a ballot, but you better make sure it's counted. And coming from NAMFRL, I can tell you that's been a very valuable exercise. And finally, remain vigilant until the next election. Don't stop from monitoring the behavior of elected officials and just vote and then make a decision at the next election. You have to constantly monitor them throughout their term. So let me close with that, and just a reminder, many of you may not have been around at the time, but in 1986, and we're celebrating the 36th year of people power and of this particular election, ordinary citizens, we had to vote and we had to protect our ballot to make sure elections were not stolen. So let me leave it at that, and I'd be happy to answer questions later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bill. Yeah, it's good to see you again and really have your take and expertise here. And you did end with a clarion call from Edmund Burke about all that takes for evil to transpire for good men to do nothing. But I think one of the favorite sayings that I think are more relevant today is Ben Shapiro's "Facts don't care about your feelings." And at the end of the day, those facts that you've put together and you've shared with us really show how much groundwork we need to make in the next 75 days to have better discourse and a more informed decision. But more importantly, the opportunities you can take to protect the vote and to protect the kind of informed decision you need to make this election count, this watershed election count. So thanks, and look forward to speaking with you at the panel. Now, finally, we have the co-founder and executive director of Mano Amiga Philippines, a multi-awarded K-12 school and social enterprise focused on creating education and livelihood opportunities for low-income communities. She's also the co-founder and CEO of She Talks Asia, a women-centered platform and impact agency focused on amplifying messages of empowerment, diversity, and inclusion. She's also been named a UNAOC Fellow, an Obama Asia Pacific Leader, and an awardee of the 10 Outstanding Women in the Nation's Service, or TOWNS, among many others. Ladies and gentlemen, Lynn Pinugu.
Thank you, Quintin. Hi, everyone. And thank you so much to Phoenix for inviting me this afternoon. You've heard so many speeches already, so I'll keep mine short. Phoenix asked me to share with you my experience as a youth leader on how to make our voice count, especially in the upcoming elections. But before that, allow me to introduce myself a little bit to everyone. So as was said in the introduction, although I wear many hats, my main work is that I'm an educator. When I was 23 years old, I put up a school for underprivileged children called Mano Amiga, which means helping hand. And our dream for the school is that we're able to provide high quality education to children, particularly those from low-income families who might not have access to this kind of education otherwise. And in Mano Amiga, 70% of the students are scholars. Now, although I'm not a teacher, I always try to teach a class because this is how I get to know my students. And one of the things I like to do is I like to teach a creative writing class, and I always ask our fifth grade students, what problem do you want to solve someday? And I always get these answers. One student will always say, I want to solve traffic someday. I want to say, I want to solve climate change, pollution. And one student said he wanted to solve the lack of jobs. But there's this answer that really made an impression on me. She was only 12 or 13 at the time, and she's actually 18 now. She's going to be a first-time voter. She said that children are afraid of going to hospitals, and that's the problem she wants to solve. And the reason why that's important to her is because children, since they don't want to go to the hospital, some of them, they don't get better. And she's speaking from experience because her younger sister had dengue and she had high fever and she refused to go to the hospital even if she needed to already. So Ariane said in her essay that she wanted to build a hospital for children called Don't Be Afraid. And this hospital will be colorful, and this will have a lot of toys, and all the doctors will be required to be extra friendly. And again, that story made an impression on me because after years of working with young people, I can honestly say that they constantly inspire me. And the superpower that I see, apart from their energy and their imagination, is really that they have fresh and unconstrained eyes. And what do I mean by this, and why is this important? Whenever I hang out with kids, I always notice, it's so easy for them to be able to tell what's right or what's wrong. And whenever we come up with these problems that they need to solve, they're not limited by what's normal, or they are not limited by what's something that's already been done. They always come up with something new. And even when I get interviewed and I get asked, you were 23 when you put up the school and you didn't have any background in education, I always say, if I do that now that I'm 37, I'm not sure I'd be able to do this because I'm not sure I'll be as brave, as creative, or as fearless as I was back then. But the problem is, in an adult-run world, the voices of young people are often not heard or consulted, right? And this is a challenge because we're really missing out. But that's something that's not true every time it's election season, because this is a time when they're really looking at you. Gretchen and Bill both mentioned this earlier, that 56% of the May 2022 voters are part of the youth. And this is really a chance that we could show the leaders or we could make your voice heard and tell them, this is the kind of country that I deserve. So what are the different tips that I can give you in terms of making your voice count? Again, you've heard so many speakers already share why it's so important for us to vote this coming elections. But one thing that I want to help with is, again, give you concrete tips on why we must choose leaders who are aligned with the kind of future that we want. I just came from the community last week because we're about to start our face-to-face classes, and I started speaking to the parents and the families, and they all have stories to share how much the pandemic has impacted them. And one of the things that the moms asked me was, Miss Lynn, sinong magbabayad ng utang na inutang ng gobyerno? Sinong magbabayad nun? And I had to tell her that, of course, it's gonna come out from us, right? And she kept saying, bakit sila nag-decide ng ganon, right? The thing is, the decisions made by those in power, they don't only impact our present life, they also shape the trajectory of our future. A while ago, Gretchen talked about values, and I do think that's going to be a very important starting point. So Sorry, I'm back.
I think we lost you again, Lim. She froze from my end. I don't think it's.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. Okay, I'll continue.
problem.
So Gretchen, again, and Bill already spoke about things on how we can decide which candidates to choose. And I just wanted to share with you 3 additional questions that I found helpful and that I actually shared with our teachers and our students. So the first is, do their actions match their promises? At paano sila nanilbihan sa kanilang kapwa? I showed you earlier that these in the upcoming elections, the youth vote really matters. So right now, they're gonna say what you wanna hear. And it's important for us to do our background checks, di ba? It's important for us to understand, yung bang sinasabi nila, tama ba? Ginawa nga ba nila yun nung nakaupo sila? And I like asking myself this question, paano sila nanilbihan sa kanilang kapwa? It has been said earlier that it's important for them to be servant leaders, right? Because that's the purpose, that's the main role. But that's not what's happening usually. And then again, it's important to be able to ask that question. Bill asked earlier, what are the qualities of a good leader? How are they as leaders? And I think that's very important. To me, honestly, whenever the parents ask me, ano bang hinahanap mo pag tumitingin ka ng kandidato, lagi kong sinasabi, alam mo, walang candidate na perfect, but I like to understand how they deal with their mistakes when they do, right? I want to see, are they leaders who can be accountable for things that they did wrong? Are they leaders who can be humble enough to listen to people's feedback? And are they leaders na nakikisama sa tao, o nung leader sila, di ba, nag-power trip lang sila? And I think another question that's important to ask, sino yung mga taong nakapaligid sa kanila at anong kanilang paninindigan? Why is this important? Because again, right, when someone sits, the moment someone is elected, he's gonna hire people who's gonna work for him. He's also gonna be, we also need to be able to ask who are the people who funded his campaigns. And we need to look, di ba? Paano malaman yung values ng isang kandidato? Tignan mo rin kung sino yung mga nakapaligid sa kanila. The second tip that I always give young leaders when I speak in terms of how to make their voice count is to actually use your voice. And again, so many tips already were given earlier about, joining fact checkers organizations, being very open about your stance, encouraging other people, sharing with them what are the different issues that you care about. But I also think that's important to remind others of a nobler why. What does this mean? I think one of the superpowers of young people, right, is that in certain circumstances, we have the loudest voice. Gretchen shared earlier how in their household, there was a time when her dad was scared of vaccines, and the way they were able to address this was they have a doctor in the family to help clarify it. But in our family, we didn't have a doctor, but I'm very close to my dad. So every day I would call him up and I would try to tell him, Papa, please get vaccinated. This is why. And he would tell me, no. He'll give me several reasons, right? May microchip yan. Umabot kami sa ganung usapan. And then one time, we were, iniyakan ko ng daddy ko. Basically, umiyak ako. And then I was just saying, Papa, please, I really want to see you. And that was the most effective among all my arguments. But I do want to share one more story. Like in the recent senatorial elections, I remember may mga kids, they approached me, Miss Lynn, may sabihin kami sa'yo. Sabi ko, Miss Lynn, si Papa po tumanggap ng vote buying. Parang may bumibili daw ng boto niya. And again, it was so funny for me because to these kids, it was so clear. And when I spoke with the parents, after, they were saying that, hindi ma'am, alam ko naman na mali yun, tinanggap lang namin. I think that the older that we get and the less idealistic that we become, the more difficult or the more challenging it is to also constantly vote and decide according to our principles. Mas mahirap bumoto ng naayon sa ating paninindigan. When I talk to some people about their vote, some of them would say, kasi yun nga, ito lagi siyang namimili ng boto. So as long as that person is in power, di ba, kikita kami tuwing eleksyon. May mga tao, yung examples naman nila, pag siya yung nakaupo doon, magkakaroon kami ng magkakaroon ako ng posisyon. So magkakaroon ako ng role sa gobyerno pag siya yung nakaupo. So I think that again, one important thing that the young people can do is remind us older people of that nobler why. Why should we vote? And I added here, please be respectful, patient, and compassionate. We're so used to cancel culture, right? And whenever I am on Twitter, I always feel bad because afterwards, even if, for example, those people are actually voting for the people I like, but when I see them, throw hurtful words against people who don't share opinion, I just don't understand, diba? Wala naman yung kapupuntahan. And this is, again, something very important to me because what I've come to learn in my own family, wherein we are divided, is that your objective when talking to someone who doesn't share your opinion about a candidate or doesn't share your stance about a particular issue, it's not really to change their mind, right? But to have a decent conversation, have a respectful conversation, to understand where that person is coming from and to find a common ground. And if you can come out of that conversation wherein you have a better understanding of what that other person is going through, then I think it's a successful conversation, regardless of whether you were able to change that person's mind or not. Because again, to me, that's not an objective. And believe me, I've had a lot of experience. I will use my parents again. My dad is a hardcore Marcos loyalist. My mom is a very big Aquino fan, and all the time Cory Aquino fan. And every time this issue comes up, my friends always ask me, bakit di pa sila naghihiwalay, di ba? But you know what? Because of that, it really trained us to be more open-minded and to be more compassionate in our conversations, to the point that we can laugh about it. During the pandemic, we threw my dad a surprise party. That's a picture. Like I said, he's a Marcos loyalist. But last year, we threw him a liberal party. And he was initially shocked. As you can see that other picture, diba? He was frowning kasi parang bakit nila ako niloko. But in the end, he was so game. He put on a yellow shirt and he even posed with the Liberal Party sign. And to us, that was such a big victory. And it's so funny, when other friends saw it, they even used it. So my cousins even used it for their dad who's pro-Trump and their Biden. So they threw their dad a Biden party. Again, I don't think we can move forward if we can't find a common ground. We can't move forward if all we do is just hurl insults at each other. So really, we should use this opportunity to be able to dialogue better, di ba? Matuto tayo makipagkapwa. Galingan natin yung pakikipagkapwa. Then this is a good opportunity to do that. And the last thing that I want to share is to persevere even if you don't always see the results. And why is this important? In the recent conversation I had with young students, one of them said, ayoko na bumoto kasi yung gusto kong kandidato hindi naman nananalo. Or ayoko nang bumoto kasi hindi naman namin nararamdaman yung pagbabago eh. Parang pare-pareho lang rin naman sila. So bakit pa, 'di ba? Bakit pa kami boboto? And again, so many reasons have been given. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's really about the outcomes, right? Because more often than not, it's not really like our simple vote, diba? That one vote, diba? Parang how do you think that's gonna matter? But what we have to believe, that though our actions, they may not lead to immediate change, they always create a flicker of hope. And that hope is contagious. If you look at our history, di ba? Pag tingnan mo yung kasaysayan, marami mga tao doon, nung tumayo sila para sa kanilang paninindigan, hindi naman nila alam kung mananalo yung side nila, hindi naman nila alam kung may kapupuntahan yon. Ngayon na lang natin nakikita na binabasa natin yung tungkol doon. Pero ang mahalaga, tumayo sila para sa kanilang panindigan, pinaglaban nila kung ano yung sa tingin nila yung tama. At dahil yung mga maliliit na action na yon, over time, dumami sila, lumaki sila, nakita nila yung pagbabago na ninais nila. And the last thing that I do want to share is that mahirap mahalin yung bansa, di ba? Mahirap magserbisyo sa bayan. It's not always easy to do what's right. So you always have to hold on to your why. And to me, it will always be these students. I don't know, again, if I will see the change during my time, but I'd like to think that I'm helping create a better future for these young people. Why is this important to me? The person who invited me Hello? Sorry.
You're back.
The person who invited me to this talk, I met her when I was very young. I think I was 15 when I first met her. And at the time, she asked me, I would ask her so many questions about business, about being a good leader, and she answered every time. And I don't think when she was talking to me at 15 that she thought that I would someday be in the same event as her, sharing also my experience as a leader and telling her about the things that I'm teaching my students. So like I said earlier, I don't think I'll get to see the change that I'm dreaming of for the country, but I'd like to know that I'm doing my part and that eventually we will get there. So thank you so much, everyone, and I do hope to see you in May.
Thanks so much, Lynn. I mean, thank you very much for those stories, those true stories. Thank you so much, Lynn, for those true stories, and really more for the pointers of engagement you've advised us. I think that you can sum it up by saying, what your students said, which is don't be afraid. And if it's these stories from the community that can really be translated writ large into the country, I think there's a lot of hope, even with 70 days and time ticking. Having said that, I want to thank all our speakers. I know, Bill and Lynn, you stayed behind for the panel. So I'd love to have your thoughts on some of the questions that are being asked as we speak. And we also have J Phoenix or Junior Phoenix folks coming in and students who have specific questions for all of you. But just to start the panel, and we do have limited time, you look at elections, and as one of my mentors used to say, elections are really just a cup in the stream of public opinion. Isang tasang sinasandok sa batis ng pag-iisip ng mga botante. And the question is 70 days, was the 3 months or so that was given to us, was that a bit crammed at the 11th hour? And in light of the fact that there's a lot of fake news and toxic discourse, as Atom and Gretchen had mentioned earlier, is there such a thing as being too late given you have 70 days to change the course of a meaningful election? That's, I think, the elephant in the room we have. And I'm hoping you can shed light on that, because a lot of people are thinking that also. So may I ask, let's have Bill first, and then Lynn talk about why you think it may or may not be too late.
Well, thanks, Quintin. Well, as they say, better late than never. And actually, 70 plus days is still, enough time to bring on some change. But in fact, I think many people have been thinking about this for a much longer period of time. They just haven't kind of made up their minds, maybe. But a lot of us have been kind of mulling over this question as to who will lead us, in 2022. So there's still time to make a change, and there's still time to talk to people. There's still time to do more analysis. And I think as what's reflected in the pre-presentation polls of this group is that people are really looking to think through, and the fact that people are attending in large numbers and many of these types of webinars shows you that people are in search of answers and out to ask more questions. So I think that's a good sign, and there's always time, Quintin, to have an impact.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And I just want to share our experience working together, I think years ago, where we had forums where we had voters education and a pre and post poll of who they would vote for, at least in a national senatorial election. And you can see there were dramatic changes in that happening. So I know it is possible. The question really is, given the fact that some people who like leading disinformation campaigns have had a 6-year Cambridge Analytica start, is there enough time to overcome that asymmetry in information? So that's a reality we have to face. But like you said, 70 days is a really concrete amount of time to work with. So Lynn, I want to get your thoughts as well.
Well, since I'd like to think that, like Bill, it's never too late. Well, he said better late than never. I'd like to think it's never too late. I do think that we have to work on building the critical thinking of our young voters and even our elder voters. And I think that even if maybe some candidates had a head start in terms of sowing disinformation, I am very much encouraged also. But from what I see in the grassroots, there's so many initiatives to do voters education, and not in a forum like this, but really talking to people one-to-one, meeting them at their level, encouraging them to ask questions, again, equipping them with the basic skills to be able to see, for example, what could be considered misinformation or disinformation and what's true. And I think that so long as we all do our part in terms of really talking to someone on a one-on-one basis, then I don't think it's too late at all. I believe in the power of how a conversation can really just establish empathy. Maybe not completely change a person's mind, but at least plant the seeds towards that. And yeah, so we do have the next 78 days to do that.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. I mean, and you know what, Bill, I'm super encouraged also with what everybody said, and just I'm more on the facts that you say that with the poll saying that 50% of people still are open to changing their mind. I think that's the starting point where the conversations have to increase, obviously, as Lynn mentioned, but more importantly, that the conversations have to go at more simultaneous rapid pace, because 7 days is a long time and you have a big lever to move about people's minds, yung pag-iisip nila and yung pinipili nila sa eleksyon. The second question I have before we bring in our friends from JFinex is this idea of bridging the gap. No, they mentioned discernment or critical thinking. That was echoed also by Gretchen. You look at this infographic that was out, I think last week, wherein a total of 25 or 26 schools were showing that the vice president, for example, had the lead over the next candidate, which is the Senator Marcos, at an average of 50% percentage points. And yet the general polls, right, whether it be Pulse Asia, Souls or Weather Stations or Publicos or whatever have you, show a different or a reverse ranking. So the idea there is, you see there is a big gap. We don't want to talk about why or what without prejudice to the reasons. The question I have is, how do you bridge that gap now, apart from the conversations you mentioned? Because this is going to have to happen in a larger scale over the next 70 days to really change that asymmetry or change the discernment that's very much needed, regardless of what the outcome will be, whoever they choose. Bill?
Yeah, well, the first set of polls you mentioned, which are, let's say, taken within schools or within smaller groups, while they're not statistically randomized surveys, but they are reflecting an opinion of a group. It's just that you can't project beyond that group, but clearly there's a pattern there among that group which answered the survey, what I call the self-selected group. And I think the way to bridge the gap between that and the surveys is that for people to get very active and engage in a active discussion, even a debate maybe, on who is best for the country. It's not who do I like or who's more popular. I mean, we have to change the question. The question is, who is the best for the country? Not the best for me, not the best for a specific person, not the best for their own interests, but who is going to perform the best for the common good, for the greater number of people. And I think here we need to really reframe the question and get people to begin that discussion along that line. not engage, with the so-called false narratives that we're seeing.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And I did note that the limits of having those fallacies of lesser evil and the one that is winnable. So I think that's a good starting point we have. Lynn, your thoughts, please.
How can we do it at a larger scale? I really think we have to first understand where the people are coming from, right? Like to understand the different interests of each sector. Why is it that they feel excluded maybe from certain kinds of growth that other people have experienced in the past? And really try to communicate, again, like what I said earlier, meet them where they're at, meet them at their level, and for us to be able to understand also how to tailor the message based on the needs of each sector. Because I think maybe the challenge is sometimes, all these amazing policies, proposals are brought forward, but we don't really give people or the chance, or maybe we don't put in the effort to really digest it so that any person can understand it. Because that's something I've personally learned as an educator. Like whatever you say, no matter how amazing it is, no matter how inspiring it is in your head, even if you use the best of words, if no one can understand you, then it won't lead to anything. And I think that sometimes when I listen to the different campaigns of people, I feel that they're speaking to me, but I'm not sure if they're speaking to anyone else. So again, meet people where they're at. And again, I guess I'm giving here the grassroots perspective because, for example, I asked them, this candidate, we're talking about this candidate, this person has plans to create jobs, and look at this interview. This is what was said in the debate. But then for them, again, they can't connect how that would be inclusive, how that would translate for them. So I think it's really about going to the different sectors and again tailoring the message so that they would understand how those policies and how these projects would benefit them.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. And really, that's a genuine conversation that has to happen in terms of engaging them at their level. And I guess the final question I have before the J Phoenix folk come in is, given the fact that you have the statistics do show that 11% really come from the college graduates and 11% roughly comes from ABC, and the majority of them, that's the level you need to engage. And we're obviously on that minority stage. What platforms should these conversations go on given the limited 70+ day timeline? Bill.
Well, there are many ways we need to tackle this, and as you mentioned, the key here is scale. No, so certainly I think social media is going to be one method, I suppose, no, to use because it's got reach and it's got scale. But there are other ways to reach out as well, which is through smaller meetings, through larger forums, through meetings like this. Through family, for instance, to having discussions with barkada, with friends. So there are many, and I think there's no one method that will work. I think we have to use multiple methods because in that sense, time is compressed versus the large number of people you need to reach out to. Remember, we're reaching out to 65, 66 million voters. That's a lot of people. So we've got to devise a way to reach out. Then, of course, you got to be targeted. That's why I showed the voter profile so that you know where the concentrations of voters are. You know it by segment, by socioeconomic class, by age group. You could even get to know it by geography if you wanted to break down the numbers. So you've got to be kind of targeted a bit because you can't maybe reach out to everybody all of the time. But there's no one single method. I think you've got to use multiple means of reaching out to as big an audience as possible.
Thanks, Bill. And Lynn?
Well, I agree with Bill in terms of the multiple platforms, whether, again, social media or the smaller meetings. But I think for me also, one thing that we need to ask is how is the message being delivered? So earlier I talked about messaging, whether it actually resonates. But I think mahalaga din na maging mapagkumbaba tayo sa pakikipag-usap sa ibang tao. Hindi pwede na parang lagi tayong nakakataas, lagi tayong tama. Again, no, I learned this from my family. My dad and I, we don't see eye to eye in terms of politics, but we would never progress in our conversations if I always approach him with the mentality or with the attitude na ako yung tama, ikaw yung mali. And I think that's the only way really people will listen, right? Because sometimes we can get preachy, and we can always approach people from a moral high ground. And I think, again, I keep repeating this, but for me, it's really about having that authentic conversation, acknowledging them where they're at, why they feel a certain way, and making sure that they understand how these things could benefit them.
Okay, thank you very much, Lynn. Much appreciated. And hopefully everybody has those kinds of conversations also. Now, let's bring on our J Phoenix student panelists to come on board. We have J.R. Hapan from De La Salle University, Aspirations. He has a question for Bill.
Yes, sir. Hello, good afternoon. My name is J.R. Hapan. I am from J Phoenix, De La Salle University, Dasmariñas. So, I believe that we all want that right to vote and not to be a privilege at all. So my question is, why do you think there are so many people in general who choose not to vote in our country, which is the Philippines?
Yeah, thanks, JR. Well, actually, we're kind of fortunate in the sense that if you compare us across the rest of the world, the Philippines has one of the highest voter turnouts of democracies, and it's something that we'd like to maintain. That high number. We think that's a healthy number. And in the last election, 2019, which is just for Congress and Senate and the rest of the other positions, it was already at 76%, which is quite high actually for other countries. But we would expect for this year, there's going to be about 86%. If we could get more people to vote, that would be great. Above 85, 86%. But believe me, that's a very high number. I think our challenge really is just to be able to get people to vote for certain criteria, excuse me, that they set in their mind as to what is important, not for them personally, not for us personally, but what is important for the country. Who will serve the country the best? That is the ultimate criteria, and that's a question we all need to ask ourselves. And I think while we all go out in large numbers to vote, we're not necessarily all asking the same question.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate that reiteration.
Thank you, po. Thank you.
Thank you, JR.
Thanks, Bill. Always appreciate the reframing of the question. That is really the ultimate overriding concern. Now we have April Roda Cabando from Cebu Institute of Technology, also with a question for Bill.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Sir Luz. I'm April Roda Cabando, J Phoenix from Cebu Institute of Technology University. So since we're talking about voting and then the election is coming up, and then the Comelec released a percentage of 52% youth Filipino voters for the year 2022. So here is my question. How can you persuade a friend or like someone you knew to register to vote? Or is it really necessary to persuade them to vote, given that it is for the betterment of our country and then generally to exercise our right to vote? That's all.
Yep. Thank you, April. Generally, I always encourage people to register and to vote. Okay. So I must tell you that I was once a pro boycott person. Okay. Meaning I did not vote. Okay. Even when I was eligible to vote, I did not vote. But I realized that we could be quite effective also by voting. And in fact, maybe could be more effective. So I always go back to the thing that part of that wasted vote is if you don't vote, if you abstain or you just outright boycott. I always encourage people to vote because you've got to make that choice for someone. So for example, as a habit, I never leave a blank on my ballot. I never leave a blank. Now, there's some people who say, well, I really can't think of 12 senators to pick. And I sympathize, with everyone who thinks that way, because it's really hard to think of 12 senators from the current list that we see. But I really make it an effort to try to fill in the 12 votes. Because if I only fill in part, then those blanks make it easier for the bad candidates to get in. So remember that, you're making a choice for people who you want to have run the country. And it's not something that you want to entrust all the time to other people and not participate in that act of voting. So I always encourage people to act. And of course, in voting, I do encourage people to do the homework. So important, and just think of it personally. If we were to run our organization, let's say J Phoenix, okay? I mean, I don't think you'd be fast and loose and just selecting people who to run the organization for you. You somehow evaluate a person who's going to be on your leadership team. And it's the same for all of us in an organization or a company or a student organization or a church-based group, an NGO. I mean, let's face it, even among friends, we still make that decision, right? Who among our barkada is our leader? I mean, we're not that haphazard about that, I hope, right? We have some criteria in our mind. We just have to consciously think about the criteria. And so that'll force us to really evaluate with some discipline who we're going to pick for, because the ultimate choice is, of course, who's going to run the country.
May I add something also very quickly? I think that for us, what worked, and I want to share this with you, is make it very concrete. Diba? So Bill said, what do you want to see us in terms of a leader? What's our criteria? But for others, that might be too abstract. What worked in our community during the pandemic, all the teachers wanted to be in Pasig. Kasi in Pasig, Mayor Vico was giving out laptops. So when we were having this conversation recently, that was the biggest motivator for them. And they were saying, we need to encourage our students to vote kasi they need to see how it could be, right? I think some people kasi they don't vote because they think pare-pareho lang naman, di ba? They don't think change is possible. But then by highlighting how things could be, and again, that was a very good and concrete example for us kasi talagang nakita nila during the pandemic what Mayor Vico did for the teachers. That was enough to convince them that they really need to make their voice count during these elections.
Thanks, Lynn. And I know Bill has to drop off, but the next questions are actually for you and by extension, Gretchen, who's back on the panel as well. So thank you very much, Rona. And let's bring on Aldrin John Tungol from Pamantasan ng Kabuyao. He has a question for Lynn, and by extension, let's have Gretchen answer the same question.
Hello, good afternoon po. I'm Aldrin Jantungol from Pamantasan ng Kabuyao, and my question will be for Miss Lynn. As a student leader po, we always talk about voice count. Our voice counts po. Pero paano po natin masasabi na yung voice natin ay hindi na overpowered? Kasi minsan po yung voice natin, ginagamit natin is to express our feelings, di ba po? Pero minsan po kasi may mga student leader na sa sobrang taas ng tingin nila sa sarili nila, na-overpower na po yung voice. So paano po natin siya maiiwasan yung parang i-overpower yung voice? Yun na po.
You mean na-overpower yung voice nino ng mga ibang tao dun sa tao dun sa grupo, sa organization?
Yes po.
Okay. Okay, so that's an important leadership question, no? So like me, I had that problem also because I can be very assertive, no? I can be a very assertive person. And not all people in the education, at least in my organization, are assertive. In fact, parang some people, they're shy to give feedback kasi feeling nila, di ba, parang hindi sila sinanay na magbigay ng feedback. So pag ako nagsasalita, parang minsan ine-echo nila yung gusto ko lang sabihin. So hindi ko talaga nalalaman kung anong gustong sabihin nila. One thing that helped me was this image, no? Sabi sa akin nung isang org dev person, tinanong ko siya, sabi niya, kailangan mong intindihin na sa isang organization, yung leader para siyang lion sa watering hole sa Africa. 'Di ba? Sa watering hole, pag yung lion umiinom, wala siyang pakialam dun sa mga ibang animals na katabi niya. Pero yung antelope, kahit na umiinom lang sila doon, kahit siguro hindi gutom yung lion, kabadong-kabado yung antelope kasi nandun yung lion. And to me, as a leader, as a youth leader, especially if you're heading an organization, you always have to reflect, how am I making others feel? Am I really creating a safe space for feedback? Ang problema kasi pag nagiging echo chamber, 'di ba? Pag hindi mo naman alam yung lahat ng bagay, ayun nga yung superpower, 'di ba, ng mga kabataan. Parang meron tayong multiple creative approaches to a particular problem kasi we have fresh eyes. So just ask yourself, what am I missing out on kung masyado akong kung ino-overpower ko yung boses ng ibang tao. So how do I create a safe space? And I think the best way to do that is, 'di ba, parang how do you respond pag may suggestion sila? Shina-shutdown mo ba? Or 'di ba, parang do you ask them to expound para pakita mong interested ka? 'Di ba, chini-cheer mo sila? Do you find different ways for them to give their feedback? And I think if you do that, then you'll be able to create that space, no, where people are more open about their opinion.
Thanks, Lynn. Is Gretchen here? Can Gretchen also weigh in? Okay, if she's not in, then we'll go to our next J Phoenix fellow. She's Clarissa Cayadong from Ateneo de Davao University, also with a question for Lynn.
All right, thank you so much, Sir Quintin. And hi, good afternoon, everyone, especially to the speakers, to Miss Lynn, the organizing team, and my fellow finance students. I'm Clarissa Cayanong. I'm the president of the Junior Finance Executives of Ateneo de Davao University. First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to the people behind this event. It is truly an honor to be able to listen to very substantial and helpful talks from all of the speakers. I really like how Ms. Dean said that our actions may not always lead to change, but they always create a flicker of hope. This leads me to a realization that I or the young people do not really have to make the grandest effort to contribute to the country or to the Philippines. Just simple acts such as utilizing our rights or privilege to vote and choosing the right people to lead would be of great contribution already. So, well, basically, since Ms. Lynn and Ms. Gretchen has repeatedly mentioned social media in their talks a while ago, so I'll be asking regarding social media since it's also one of the used platforms today. So Ms. Lynn, given that we have already done our background checks and we have already did our deep research on the candidates that we opt to vote for the 2022 national elections, and as young people who wanted to utilize social media because we're very torn to social media and we wanted to amplify our views and opinions on relevant political issues in a proper and right manner. But undeniably, as we have all observed, that social media is people in social media at the moment are very very loud. And also there are lots of people in the online platform who are very aggressive and who would want to definitely take the chance to contradict with you in any way, regardless of who you are, where you come from, and how pure your intentions are. So the question would be, what should be done in cases and situations like this? Would it be better to just sit back and keep your views and opinions within smaller audience, within your friends or family? Or is it really better to take the courage and use your influence in the online world? And if so, to handle people who would contradict you or who would say a lot of bad things for you, with you. Yun pa. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the question would be, what are you prepared to handle? Right? Because I think that both have an impact. I think that when you talk to a smaller circle, what I was saying earlier, you can be more tailored about your message. Kasi, di ba, kilalang-kilala mo kung sino yung kausap mo. But I think one value that being public about your opinion is that you embolden other people to share their views about the topic. Di ba? You give other people the courage to say so. But as you pointed out, unfortunately, social media has become very toxic na laging meron, like you said, no, kahit pure yung intentions mo. So I think that you have to condition yourself that if you become public, that this is something that you would have to deal with, and are you okay with that? Diba? Parang what can you hold space for? Kasi like I have a friend, she's a public figure, she's very open about her opinion, but there are days when she's up for it and may mga araw na hindi niya talaga kaya. Right? Because nga, it is part of it. And I think, we have to help each other, di ba? We have to make sure that we report people pag bastos sila. We have to call out people kapag, they're attacking a person's character. Kaya nga sinabi ko kanina in my talk, no, kahit na kakampi mo yung nagsasalita, if that person starts attacking a person's character or how that person looks, which has nothing to do with the argument, I think that person has to be called out. So again, both have impact, and it really depends on you, what you feel like you're being called for, I guess, for that particular moment or for that particular day, maybe.
All right, thanks, Larissa, and thanks, Lynn. I think in the interest of time, let's just wrap up this forum and panel by saying, first of all, thank you to Atom, to Gretchen, to Bill, to Lynn. Different viewpoints, but really just the same clarion call, same themes together. Register to vote, engage sincerely, vote wisely, protect your vote. And I think the common denominator I share with you is I wish we had more time to discuss these things, because this is such an important thing for something that's happening in 74 days. And I wish we had also more time to have those conversations so that we can really get the scale where people can have more informed decisions, and hopefully that will be the case in the next 70 days. So thank you very much to all our speakers and panelists, and for Phoenix for doing this. Now, at this point, I would like to call on Edmund Allen Jansen, or EJ, for an exciting announcement. EJ.
Hey, thank you, Quentin, and thank you very much to our speakers today. It was such an exciting session. As you can tell from today's forum, Phoenix really advocates for well-informed and responsible voting. So to make this forum even more engaging and fun, and also to share the lessons from today, we're launching a video making contest. Anyone who's a newly registered voter can participate in the contest. You just have to produce an original 60-second video aligned with our discussion today, upload it to your Facebook account, make sure it's viewable by the public, and tag us using the hashtags #PhoenixPhils, #YourVoteMatters, and #MakeItRightMakeItCount. We'll be picking 3 winners for this contest. 2 of the winners will be selected by the judges based on the video's content, alignment with message, originality, and audience impact, among others, while the 3rd winner will be selected based on the most number of likes that the video has gathered. Each winner will then be receiving a corresponding cash prize, and will be announcing the winners on a succeeding forum or session on this topic. For further details, please check the JPhoenix official Facebook page. We welcome everyone who's qualified to join the contest and post your entries. Please tell your friends, please encourage them to also participate, and don't forget to tag us and use the hashtags. Show us your creativity and knowledge on the subject matter through your video entry. And remember the lessons from today, that your vote matters, make it right, and make it count. On another note, JPhoenix is conducting 2022 mock elections for the president and vice president to gauge the general sentiment of the academe and youth sectors that attended this Zoom session. Each respondent can vote only once and may opt to remain anonymous, and will be sending out an email after today's session. Rest assured that strict confidentiality will be observed in the verification of email addresses indicated in the form, and we have an 11 p.m. cutoff time today for the submission of entries. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks so much, EJ, for your initiative and your leadership on this matter, and we look forward to the elections as well. I think it's important to make your voice heard, especially these mock elections, because they're the ones that actually help articulate your voice, your opinion, and give you the confidence to do it at the actual election of May 9. So to wrap up and end our program, may I now call on the co-chairperson for Good Governance and the PNA Grant Thornton chairperson and CEO, Maria Victoria C. Españo.
Thank you, Quintin, and thank you so much to our very interesting panel of speakers for this afternoon. Truly, it has been a wonderful afternoon. Hitik na hitik sa kaalaman at karanasan mula sa ating mga speakers. For this successful event, I would like to thank the organizers, our Phoenix President, Mike Corin, our Supervising Board Trustees, Terry Magleo, Benny Sullivan, our Corporate Governance Committee Chair, Baby Nuesa, energetic ladies, Malu Cristobal and Judith Lopez, and our J Phoenix Committee Chair, EJ Jensen, and other members of the J Phoenix Committee. And most importantly, our Phoenix Secretariat led by Mike Vinluan. And syempre, maraming salamat to the students who joined us today and other Phoenix members. Meron pa tayong paraffle, so please do not leave. For me, as I said, it was really a very interesting afternoon. I could not even leave my seat because the conversation was really very impactful. No, I learned that in choosing the right leaders, we must really be very careful. We must evaluate the candidates. Bill compared it to hiring somebody. If you look at it from a more personal level sa mga estudyante natin, because you haven't experienced maybe being hired or hiring somebody, maybe ang pinakamalapit dito sa tingin ko is yung pagpili ng manliligaw, di ba? Kailangan kinikilatis ng maigi. Sabi nga ni Angelica Panganipan, huwag magpapabudol. Tunto ako sa commercial na yun eh. Very practical and very simple, no? Actually, if you think about it, dapat siguro talaga nating isipin na ang pagpili ng presidente mas importante pa sa pagpili ng employee or boyfriend. Kasi remember, 6 na taon sila na magiging leader natin. Dapat pag-isipan natin ito. Ang boyfriend or after 2 weeks, pag hindi mo na siya type or hindi mo pala gusto yung totoo niyang ugali or peke yung projection niya, pwede ka makipag-break up. If you are the employer, you can fire your employee. Now, the leaders that we are choosing will be with us for the next 6 years. It is a huge decision. Hindi natin sila pwedeng isole or hindi tayo pwedeng you cannot say fire or break up na tayo. And therefore, we must really consider those points that Bill, Lynn, and our other speaker was also emphasizing earlier. So if you think about the issues that are relevant to our country, dapat pag-isipan natin kung ano sinasabi ng mga leaders natin. Kasi those are the issues that they will be facing for our country, for us. Hindi sila pwedeng absent, hindi pwedeng natutulog sa pinag-uusapan, at mas lalo nang hindi pwedeng magpakit lang. Okay? So, pag-isipan natin to lahat. Let us give it its proper importance. Ang mga estudyante dito, napakagaling nyo mag-research. And I know that if you will really start to think about it, you will reach the right decision. So let us remember, you have the power, we have the power to decide para sa kinabukasan natin bilang Pilipino. Let us all vote wisely. Maraming salamat and I'll be turning back to Quintin.
Thank you so much, Mary Vic, for